All right, story of the 10. Story of the 10 started in the summer of 2023. And like my usual, I'm doing food plots all summer long and running cameras throughout the whole summer. And I mean, this summer we really didn't have anything too special for us besides some real good up and comers for next year that got real good potential. And, I'm looking through this year's intel, cameras, and seeing kind of what we had in store for us for this year's hunting season. And, watched the camera throughout the summer and didn't really have a shooter in mind. And I've had years like this previously to where I don't have a shooter in mind throughout bow season, and here we go. Sometimes there's just gonna be a shooter pop up, and other years I have a deer that I find in the summer and be like, yep, I'm gonna chase him. But this year was one of the years to where I didn't have a buck that I really wanted to chase in the summer that I saw. And so it kind of got down to bow season, and here in September, I opted not to go out in September at all this year. Kind of let the deer just keep doing their natural things, and so I was still running cameras and checking them every couple weeks, and going through pictures and figuring out, yeah, this deer is which deer, and trying to get the piece of the puzzle, kind of together. And it got down to October, and I still haven't gone out bow hunting yet. And I think it's about October 5th, I went out for my first sit of the year, and the deer were moving real well, and I could tell that hunting west this year was going to be a good idea just because the deer were less pressured. And I knew that, hey, maybe if I'm out here pressuring the deer less, that maybe a big one will find this area and feel comfortable in this area and make this his home. So kind of what I banked off of this year was that, and uh, still running cameras, and I ended up finding one probably mid-October on camera that was like a stud. And it was a Big Ten, and I knew that he was going to be a real good deer. And from then on, that was kind of the deer I was after and was going to dedicate my whole hunting season to. And October 28th, the weekend of October 28th, there was rut activity getting real fired up that weekend, and was very happy with what I was seeing. Lots of young bucks running all over the place. And, the deer were running, and a lot of the young bucks were chasing that weekend. And I hadn't really seen anything besides a 3.5, 4.5-year-old buck running does around. So I knew that probably somewhere here in the next couple of days that there was going to be a big one around the area, finding a hot doe and getting after them. So October 28th, I think it was a Saturday, I went out, and morning sit was okay. I saw some deer, but that afternoon I went out probably about around 2:30, and lots of deer activity that night. And I ended up seeing that Big Ten on the fence line there. Never came in close enough, head down to the ground, just running this whole way. And I grunted at him, and he didn't even turn, didn't even flinch. And so he had something on his mind, I think, and went back over in the bedding area. And come to find out that day that he daylighted 4 days in a row, the 28th, 29th, 30th, 31st, and of October. And I think he had a hot doe around, and he was gone. So I was still trying to hunt as hard as I can, in the weekends and after I got off work that night. And after kind of finding that deer on camera, I knew that I had to get out in the stand more. So, and with the rut, I love hunting the rut. So, it came down to that, and I'm like, I need to go out more and see if I can find something. So, I think it was the first part of November, I started seeing a lot of rut activity kick up. And this year was kind of different because years past, I mean, rattling does work a decent amount, But this year I found rattling to really work. And I mean, it was calling in small bucks, but also bigger bucks. I was able to rattle in. And I think it was around October 5th or November 5th that I was seeing some of the mature bucks starting to really get on their feet and were moving like at 12 o'clock in the afternoon. And I knew that the rut was kind of in full swing there. So I hunted that weekend, and I really just saw smaller bucks and nothing too mature. So the Friday before Wisconsin's gun season, the weekend before Wisconsin's gun season, it was a Friday, and I knew that I had to take off work because I just had a really good feeling that it was going to be a really good day to be out in the woods. So I ended up taking that day off of work and decided I was going to go out hunting. And Friday morning was a good morning. I saw lots of deer and had some bucks moving up on the hill, and like little bucks snort wheezing at each other and start to spar and stuff like that, but nothing big yet. And I knew that night's sit was probably going to be pretty good, just judging off of how the morning went. So I ended up going back in the house and kind of came up with a little game plan, of what I was going to do that night and how I was going to end up doing it. So that night I ended up going out, and I think it was right around 3 o'clock, and the deer were already up on their feet. We had a small cold front coming in, and I knew that the deer were going to be on the feet, just judging off of the deer movement there Saturday night or Friday night. And I started watching, and does just kept coming out and coming out and coming out, and I knew that sooner or later there's gonna be a buck behind them. Just had to be. Being middle of November with the rut in full swing, that there was gonna be a buck behind them. And I think it got to about 4 o'clock that night, and I had probably 20-25 deer on the field and 2 food plots right there in a bowl. And ended up having 3 button bucks within 15 yards of me for about a half hour just feeding in the food plots. And I knew that they were probably going to start moving off, and sure enough, all the deer started moving into the woods there and kind of getting out of my sight. And I was able to kind of start moving around because all night long I could hear a grunt behind me. And every time I tried to look back, I had to be real careful with the deer in front of me, and I wanted to make sure I wasn't going to spook anything, but try and see what that grunt was behind me. So the little button bucks started to funnel off, and the does were all gone by then, and I had a little button buck down the watering hole to the east of me. And he ended up just drinking for a while down there, and he ended up coming right behind me, and he just had to stop right there. So I knew that something was probably up right there if he stopped like that. So with him underneath me, I was able to turn my head just enough to where I could hear a grunt again, but then also see a rack, and come up over the hill on the ridge there. So the little button buck starts to go up to the north of me, and I was able to stand up and do a 360 in my stand and get ready just to kind of investigate and see what that buck was. And sure enough, I'm like, that's a good buck. And I got ready, and he stopped at the fence line there, and I had a doe right along the fence line that I didn't see, and she ended up spooking. She didn't blow, but she just took off running. So other does in the plot there took off running, and I figured that he went with them. So I was kind of disappointed there and turned back around and got ready, and I had to take my gloves off at that moment, and I ended up putting them back on because I figured that buck was gone. So I ended up sitting back down, and I heard something right away. It sounded like a deer crossed the fence line. So I turned back around, and I saw that it was him coming in, and he was coming hot. He was in probably 35 yards right there. So I ended up standing up and very carefully standing up and getting my bow, and I ended up getting a full draw there, and he was coming right in on a string. And as luck would have it, he turned broadside at 20 yards and was able to put an arrow in him, and I knew that hit him pretty well. He was a little quarter to me, so I knew that the exit was going to be all right, but the entrance looked real good. And they gave him a half hour and went out to see if I could find blood there on the impact site, and sure enough, I found an awesome blood trail. Led me right to him, and I'm very happy with how the season went, with how I kind of managed the deer this year, and was very pleased to see the results of when I ended up getting. And this is the buck that I ended up shooting. It's 147 and 6/8 inch 10 pointer that I ended up shooting.